Why is everybody being so stupid? Why is everybody so ridiculous all of a sudden? How come no one can actually just come and make their position? How come, 10 years ago when we would have these kind of debates, they were pretty high tier intellectual debates. Everything has just devolved into calling everybody names, and it's just completely ridiculous. It seems like if you wanted to convince people of your position, you would want to make arguments, but I guess nowadays that's actually becoming a detriment to a position if you actually can make arguments for it, because it's really just about who shouts the loudest. And so I want to open it up to any comments, any questions. Protestantism, evangelicalism, geopolitics, intelligence agencies, you name it, it's all on the table today. Don, unmute if you want to talk.
Hey man, how's it going?
Good, what's on your mind?
Yeah, so I read the Bible every week. I can read a bit of Hebrew and Aramaic. I'm an Irish nationalist. Zionism is just nationalism for Israelis. They want to have a country. They fought the British, won a country, signed treaties. Bim bam boom. That's it.
Okay, does that have anything to do with the Bible, or what do you think that is? It's a utopian socialist movement. So is that a good thing?
I don't really care. The country is like 5,000 kilometers away from me. They can be socialist or not. I don't care.
Oh, do they have an influence in Ireland's recent decisions about open borders?
The Irish government is insanely anti-Israel for bizarre reasons. It's probably to do with the influence of Qatar in the Irish economy and the media.
Right. Yeah, Qatar, who is pro-Israel and helps and aids Israel, is influencing all the anti-Israeli media, right?
Qatar is anti-Israel.
No, they're not. They've recently aided Israel, so that's total bullshit.
They
All right,
definitely
this
were
is not a
assisting.
serious. This is a read. Moving on. What's up, Unwanted? That guy doesn't read Hebrew. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jay, I would just ask for. I'm kind of wondering about millennialism, if I pronounce that right.
Uh
Why
huh.
does the Orthodox Church specifically reject that, or if you
Because
guys?
it is a Judaizing heresy. That's why. I mean, the millennium is not 1,000 years because Christ's kingdom began at the first advent and it's still around. So, how could it be 1,000 years? The kingdom is called the church many times in the New Testament. Jesus began his reign when he ascended and sat at the right hand of the Father. Every time the New Testament cites Psalm 110, it talks about that reigning, that kingdom as a present reality at the ascension. So, unless you believe that the ascension hasn't happened yet, it's utterly stupid to think that premillennialism is true.
Okay, and also, do you guys um you say that there's no future early like kingdom, right? Like, because I've heard a
The
bunch of people.
return of Christ is the renovating of the entire universe. That's the conflagration. So there's a new heavens and a new earth when Christ returns. There's no need for a reinstituted earthly sacrifice or any of this nonsense. All that stuff is interpreted in the book of Hebrews as about the spiritual realities in the church. The feast of Zechariah is not an end times feast in the nation state of Israel. The church is the nation state of Israel in Zechariah.
Okay, thank you so much, Jay Dyer.
Yes. And it doesn't matter if one or two church fathers thought that the millennium was literal. That has nothing to do with proving that that's the correct view. There's literally no one that believes that we just follow one or two church fathers, whether you're Protestant, Roman Catholic, or Orthodox. Nobody believes that. So just citing this to that church father about premillennialism doesn't even matter. It's irrelevant. Also, uh, it's disputed. You could argue whether or not the statements in some of the early patristic texts are even necessarily literal. It's just assuming that there's a literal meaning. They might have meant their comments in a spiritual sense. Charles, what's up? Yep.
Hey, it jumped me ahead, so I missed what you were saying a second ago. I just wanted to come in and say, I think that one of the crucial things that I always find missing in this conversation about Israel and the church and Christ is Matthew 2:15, and how historically it's understood Christ is actually the true Israel. The prophecy that was
Correct.
fulfilled, the prophecy that was fulfilled, that I called my son Israel out of Egypt, is fulfilled in Christ.
I've
And the
cited it many
church,
times.
yeah, and the church which straddles both covenants, because the gathered ones in the Old Testament, ecclesia, is in the Greek Septuagint. So the church has always been there. We are Israel insofar as we are united to Christ covenantally by faith and are part of His body. But He is the true Son. You know, the scriptures mention Adam as a son, Israel as a son. They were both typological, pointing forward to the true son that would come. And all of the promises that pertain to Israel are fulfilled in Christ. And you can actually see this in the
Yep.
Beatitudes. The Beatitudes, Christ is not so focused on like that little strip of land in the Mediterranean anymore. He says the meek shall inherit the earth,
No,
the entire world.
Romans 4 says that the plot of land and the taking of the plot of land is a type of the church taking the entire earth.
Right, exactly, exactly. And again, in the promise in the Beatitudes is blessed are the meek because we inherit what is Christ's. It's Psalm 2. Ask of me and I will give you the nations and the ends of the earth as your inheritance.
Yeah.
So the
Well,
entire earth is ours because of Christ.
correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. Totally agree. There's a problem, though, I think, in your position, which is that if you look at Numbers 11, and if you look at when Moses lays hands on the 70, this is parallel to what's happening in the book of Acts and in 1st and 2nd Timothy. So just as Israel has a historic lineage and succession, the church has a post-Pentecost empowered lineage and succession. And as a reformed person, you are not a part of that lineage. You have severed yourself from it. So how do you reconcile that with your ahistorical view?
I, you know what? I reject obviously the presupposition that you're taking. You would have to prove that the succession through the laying of hands up through Middle Ages all the way into the Reformation period
Okay, yeah.
was severed.
Did the
And
church
obviously,
fathers through did the church
obvi-
wait a minute prove that it was severed? As a reformed person, you don't believe in apostolic succession.
yeah, of course I do.
No, you don't. What are you talking about? There's no reformed person that believes in apostolic succession.
No, yeah, we do. We just define it
No, you
differently.
don't.
But you
Well,
you would be asking me to actually
well,
prove two different
redefining the
things.
words means that it's no longer apostolic succession. You should know that. Why are you being dishonest?
I'm not being dishonest. What I'm saying though
What
is
does
that you're asking.
apostolic succession mean?
I'm actually pulling into my house right now. So let
What
me
does
call
that
back
have to
in
do with anything?
because I'm getting off
Okay.
the phone
Yeah,
really quick.
right. Yeah, so this is what they do. They redefine the terms to mean not what everyone knows it means, to mean some other Reformation distinctive. So it's just lying and deceptive like every other heresy in history. They redefine the words to mean their position. When you can go read the church fathers who believe in an actual historic laying on of hands, you can read the list of the successions of bishops. In fact, even Protestant scholars like the what is it, the 10-volume Schaff Church History series, even that lists the apostolic succession in Rome. So this guy's lying. Alpine, what's up, man? I'm you. Thank you
Oh,
for
hey,
that
Jay.
comment.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the UK for a minute,
Okay.
and especially like what's going on here politically. Um, a few days ago, or yesterday, and a few days ago, a lot of people here have been dying because of immigrants. Like, there was an incident that happened in Huntingdon, where I live, where about 9 people were attacked by, I believe it was some Caribbean immigrants on a train, and the government keeps like it's a fucking joke. Like our government just doesn't care anymore, and they keep trying to hide the fact
No,
that
it's
like the
not that they
immigrants
don't
are.
care. They're actively working against socialists, and this is what they said they would do 100 years ago.
Yeah, but like, what's the end goal? I don't understand it. And is there any way we can like fight back against it? And
What do you mean? The end goal is to bring about a socialist situation. That's the stated end goal.
well,
I
is
mean,
there anything that like we can?
Keir Starmer says all of your activity will be traced and tracked, digital IDs. I mean, he literally says all the goals that they wrote about 100 years ago.
So is there anything that we can do as Brits to basically combat this? Because like it's a little bit scary. Like it's
Yeah.
especially like when I'm going to liturgy. Now it's a big concern that like someone might come in and just like attack us or something.
I mean, that's what we're called to. I don't. There is no easy answer. I mean, I'm not trying to be dismissive, but like H. Brozzi said, it may get worse and worse as time goes by. I don't know what the answer is because these people are entrenched through a bureaucracy that you almost can't remove. So I don't know how politically you do that. And that's why I mean, I'm not black pilled, but I quit caring about politics a long time ago. And then people say, oh, you're a coward because you quit caring about it. It's like, well, how is it cowardice to recognize the reality of like how much you can actually change in the world of politics if you're not like a 100 millionaire billionaire. So, I mean, maybe people can maybe you can influence enough people. I'm not saying it's not possible. I don't know. But I think we have to keep breaking the stranglehold ideologically, like we're doing with a lot of these issues and hot topics. This is stuff that people are coming to what I learned in 2007. So I'm not being a dick. I'm just saying like I've been here, done this before. Like I've seen all this stuff. I've seen, how people handle this stuff, how they react. They swing to the extreme, and then they think, oh, I'll just read Mein Kampf, and that's based in trad. And it's like, well, you realize that's a bunch of pagan stuff, and that's a bunch of sterilization, eugenics, all this kind of stuff. It's kind of crazy. But so people are going to have to swing back and forth in these dialectics, and they don't listen to actual reason. They just shout at you and call you names. So I don't know. And all the sides are doing this. They're all kind of but it is good that people are starting to wake up to how foreign governments basically control our government. So he requests to speak. Notice the reform guy lied that he said he was about to come right back, and then he ran away because he doesn't want to actually debate history. So he played like he agreed with us when he doesn't. Bible, what's up?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
Hi, I wanted to ask about, I guess, Islam. I mean, it says Muslim in the title, so I'm guessing that's one of the topics. So
Sure.
given that like the messianic prophecies are like typological, you say, I guess my question is, why can't Muhammad then be in the Bible in that same manner, like in a typological manner?
First of all, the prophecies are not types. So I don't know where you got that idea. There are types that function in a prophetic way, but messianic prophecies are very precise. Secondly, there is no prophecy that has any relevance or anything related whatsoever to the person of Muhammad.
So, but do you think Isaiah 53, for example, is Jesus in the historical context, like even though it's about Israel?
Jesus is Israel in Matthew 2. We just talked about that like 2 minutes ago. He is he is Israel. He is the type.
Right, the type. So why can't Muhammad be a type as well?
Why would there be any types of Muhammad in the Bible?
If he is the final prophet, then God would predict him so
How would
people
the
know.
final prophet contradict prior revelation?
If it got corrupted, it wouldn't be
Oh, okay.
contradicting.
So if it got corrupted, then you couldn't trust the prophecies about Muhammad.
Then why did Jesus quote non-canonical books and that were
All right, this
supposed
is
to
too
attest to
stupid.
him?
All right, goodbye.
That's the
This
same
is too
standard.
dumb. So this is Muslim ADIQ. But yes, please bring more of this. Why did Jesus quote something non-canonical? Because he's divine. He can quote whatever he wants. We're not sola scripturas. We don't believe the Quran, or we don't have a Quran only type view of the Bible. Jesus can quote oral traditions. What does that have to do with whether Christianity is true or false? And you notice these people totally miss how devastating the point is about revelation is corrupted. Oh, well then how are the prophecies of Muhammad in the Old Testament? Oh, because that one's true. It's so stupid, man. I cannot believe people are this dumb. This is what we have to deal with. Like, they cannot reason through the Islamic dilemma. I've never heard any of them. I mean, even Dr. Khalil is like wrapped up in mental pretzel gymnastics, trying to come up with some weird Shia explanation for Islamic dilemma. It's open forum. If you have a question, please don't be. Please make your argument. Please have an IQ above 90. Jordan, what's up?
Hey, what's up, Jay? I was doing a little reading. Would you like to have a discussion on original sin? Um, Specifically, what
Okay.
original guilt and ancestral sin is. I think there seems to be like a misunderstanding with like original guilt. So, do you think? And I'm speculative here, but like, would you say there's a distinction between the Protestant Reformed view of personal guilt and the Augustinian view of ontological guilt, meaning that in Adam were conceived in iniquity, but we're not
I
personally
mean,
guilty.
they're basically the same position. So, I mean, Luther and Calvin defaulted to that Augustinian view that we're all in Adam as in an archetype. So, if you have the essence inner distinction and the distinction between nature, person, and will, and you understand that that's part of anthropology, then it's impossible to believe the Augustinian view of original sin.
Do you think that since we inherit Adam's effects of sin, there's a twofold effect in that we have his stain, the liability to punishment, and because the liability to punishment, the unbaptized cannot receive his
Yeah,
kingdom?
I mean, you're confused over the word stain, maybe because stain connotates ontological reality. How is a deprivation an ontological thing?
Well, I'd say the stain is inheriting his condemnation, even if it's not like an active. Like Adam himself was personally condemned for his transgression, but we
Uh
ourselves are
huh.
not personally guilty for his sin. But we still inherit his condemnation in that we have, without God's grace, we cannot enter his kingdom, right?
Correct, but that doesn't mean that infants are damned. So when you say condemnation, that implies that infants are condemned. Okay, for what?
Well, I'd say that infants themselves, I mean, I think St. Justin Popovich, like all infants, no matter even if you haven't sinned or not, under, in some sense, the evil one, because baptism, as Christ, gives the story about the wedding with
Yeah, I'm aware of all
angels.
that,
Yeah.
but okay, are infants resurrected
Well, yeah, every single person's gonna be resurrected. That's
on the basis of what?
Well, it doesn't matter if you've done good or not. You're gonna be judged according to your deeds. But of course, we know infants cannot will
Well,
because.
how is an infant right? So how are infants judged on their deeds?
Well, I'd say that. I mean, there's varying views. I'd say it's a mystery to say whether where an infant goes or not. But if an infant cannot receive the kingdom without baptism, I'd say like where would the infant then go if they're under some sort of condemnation?
Okay, do we honor the martyrs that were killed by Herod, the infants?
Yeah, the murder of the faithful innocents, yeah. But wouldn't that be different than like, because that
Why?
was blood baptism. They were murdered under Herod. Like infants,
Okay, so not right. So, but not. So basically, it's not strictly water baptism, right? So
well,
there's
yeah, but like
exceptions.
if like let's say like an unbaptized infant, let's just say they God forbid they decease, but they're not baptized by blood. Would you say I wouldn't? I'm not going to say they suffer eternal torment. That's insane to say. But like, would you then say that in normative means they have the access to heaven?
I did. When did I ever say that? So you're attributing to me a position I never said. I said that there's a difference between resurrection and ever being and theosis. So I never said that an infant necessarily participates in theosis, but we don't know their status. We're simply not told. So you're equivocating on when people say stuff like we are condemned for Adam's sin. That doesn't mean that there's an actual stain on my soul. So when you keep saying like what is the stain? If you said that we have a stain, is that an ontological reality? Because a stain is a thing, right?
Yeah, I'd say the stain is the thing. The stain itself
Is
is
what?
well, I'd say it's the effects of Adam's sin. In that
Okay,
we inherit
so
corruption, we
it's
inherit
not
death,
so
right?
okay, yeah, I agree with that, right? So it's not an ontological reality.
Can you define like in what sense you're using ontological reality? Like, would you say
Does
that?
it have substance?
No, no, no.
Being?
Sin itself doesn't have substance. It's just the privation of God. Sin itself. That's all.
Exactly. And that's all I've ever said is that infants are have a privation of the divine life. They have a mortal life, but we don't know their state or their eternal destiny because we're not told that. So you can't leap from that to infant damnation.
So would you say that they don't? Of course, they don't suffer pain, but they receive like a pain of loss.
I mean, that's the Roman Catholic position. I don't know that we're told that. Where is that in the Church Fathers? Where is that in the Orthodox view?
I mean, well, if you read the Synod of Carthage, I think isn't that affirmed at
Yeah, are
Ephesus?
you aware that that specific canon is not actually cited when the later ecumenical councils are citing Carthage?
Which ecumenical council?
That's an interpolate. It's an interpolation.
Oh, interesting. So
Yeah, you have to actually look at the scholarship on that. There's a book on original sin, the history of Augustinian doctrine of original sin, and in the actual conciliar documents, that part is not there. So when people try to cite this, they're just citing like Latin Roman Catholic versions of the minutes and whatnot of the councils.
Okay. Well, I'm all for the infants, like after the judgment day, like of them, they could join communion with God. I think Saint Gregory Nyssa had that view, but I mean, there's some other fathers who would say that. I mean, would you throw out what's his name again? I don't know if Saint Ambrose of Milan did, but like, would you say that the Latin view, even if not Augustinian, is different than our view?
How do you? Of course it is. Augustine teaches infant damnation, and he all the way up until Gregory the Great. All the Westerns teach that, and they're wrong. And even the Roman Catholic Church rejects infant damnation. So,
But
I mean, are you aware of the archetype view?
yeah, that we're all in Adam as sinners, and because of him, we're equally guilty.
Right. And so the problem with the archetype view is the mode of willing, that it doesn't distinguish nature and person. Guilt is personal. It's not it's not by nature. So you keep equivocating and saying that we're guilty by nature. And when I ask you exactly what it is, you're like, well, it's a deprivation. Well, that's my argument. And deprivation is not guilt. They're different things.
But yeah, but the what proceeds from deprivation is the liability of punishment. Saint John Chrysostom,
The what? Say that again.
the what proceeds from deprivation would be the obligation towards punishment, which is
No, it's not. You're lying. That's not true. They're two different things. That's why an infant is not guilty of sin. He doesn't sin until he commits an actual sin. That's different than the deprivation of grace. So, for example, until he reaches the age of reason, he hasn't sinned.
no. I'm not no. I'm not saying they have like demerit or like a personal sin. What I'm saying is that
Well, then what are
because
you talking about? You keep saying condemnation and equivocating and being ambiguous about what it is. Why are they condemned?
no. All I'm saying is because they have deprivation, they cannot receive God in normative means. That's what I mean, and that's the punishment. The punishment is we cannot be reconciled to God without His grace, and that's what infants receive, right? But infants themselves aren't going to go to Gehenna or anything like that. What I'm saying is that I mean, even in the when we pray for the unbaptized infants, they don't receive. It says they don't receive heaven or Gehenna. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're just simply not told, though. So you keep sort of trying to. I don't understand what you're trying to get at or what your argument is. Like, what are you trying to get me to admit?
I'm not trying to get you to admit anything. I'm
Yeah,
literally
you are. You're reading all these Latin readings and you're interested in the Latin original sin view, and it's like it's a view. So I don't understand what you're trying to prove.
no. I'm happy to be corrected. I'm not trying to state a position. I'm genuinely just curious on like what the
Well, how?
distinction
If
would
you
be.
wait a minute, if you're not stating a position, then how are you happy to be corrected? You have to have a position to be corrected.
Well, no, I'm actually I'm just curious. Like, if infants don't receive, the kingdom, it's just simply a mystery. Is that all we would leave it at?
Yeah, that's what I've always said. But you're not told for sure that they don't either, because you don't know that there are extra normative means by which God might unite them to Himself. I mean, if He went to the trouble to preach the gospel to all the dead, then there might be means by which He can reach those people that we're just not told about.
Okay. But so, is there any like view besides mystery that like the infants themselves, like after the judgment, will they receive heaven? Will they be in a neutral state, or like what would be their state?
I mean, bro, by definition, if it's left to mystery, why are you asking me the question to solve the mystery?
Because I mean, there's like a lot of views on it, though, isn't? Would you agree?
Well, then that means that it's mysterious, isn't it? It's not clear.
Hmm. Okay, I think I'll do some more reading.
Can you help? I don't understand exactly even what you're arguing. Like, just are infants necessarily? Did you hear me say that they're not participating in theosis?
Yeah. I agree with that. Like, but like,
Okay.
even like someone like I think someone told me the Serbian king before. Like, you can pray. Like Saint Margaretus agrees. Saint Ignatius, you can pray for those out of Hades, and they can receive um a lesser reward. I think that's what a baptized Orthodox Christian told me. Right. So we pray for those who are in Hades, and then they can be lifted up. Is that correct?
Again, we don't. What I don't know what you mean by lifted up. You mean saved out of Hades or
Yeah.
given?
The
I don't know. We're
prayers of the
not told.
faithful.
I mean, look, man, there's just a lot of mystery about infants in the next life that we're just simply not told, and I don't know what to say. Like you want me to commit to something beyond that, and I don't know what to say.
Hmm. Okay, so you wouldn't. Okay, so they don't suffer lesser punishments. Okay, I'll just leave it a mystery. Okay, I just want to get your view.
Well, where do you see this other than the Augustinian all the way up to Gregory the Great view?
Well, I mean, even in let's see, the Russian fathers like Saint Philaret, what's it called? The other fathers like Saint Justin Popovich, Saint Peter Mogia, they speculated on it too. I mean, didn't they write like systematic theology that we use, like the longer Catechism of the Eastern Orthodox Church that discusses
Yeah,
it?
but none of those things say that infants are damned.
Didn't Peter Mogia hold the view though of Saint Augustine?
I mean, I don't. I mean, it depends on how you're reading these texts. So when you see the word like "we're all condemned in Adam," and you assume that that means damnation, then it would prove the Augustinian view. But condemnation can refer also to the effects of Adam's sin, the same way that Paul talks about it in Romans 7 and 8. That's what extends from Adam. You know, for example, Paul says the flesh, right?
Mm-hmm.
The law of the flesh. Okay, well, the law of the flesh doesn't mean that the flesh is evil. It doesn't mean that the passions are evil. It means that it's a term that's used to encapsulate everything that we inherit from Adam, like this, like saying, "quote condemnation."
Oh, okay, okay. But would you say that, like, I mean, Saint Augustine? I think I have a quote from him. He says that the infants themselves. I mean, he had varying views, but like he said, like the infants themselves are not evil, but nor will they receive the reward because, like, not everyone who lacks
He
God's grace.
he believes in infant damnation, man. It's not even in question. He's the guy. You know what the mass damnata is?
No, what is it?
You're not familiar with that?
The Mass Damnata?
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
I haven't read it extensively.
Okay.
Well,
We're done. So this is what happens when you spend all your time trying to do all this Latin stuff, and then you fall into this. You don't even know the basics of the Augustinian view, but you want to debate it. So if you don't know what the mass damnata is, then you shouldn't be debating it. Bird, I'm you.
Hey, I just wanted to leave an anecdote out here. I'm an Episcopalian, and this week I randomly Googled, based off of listening to one of your lectures, whether or not it's permissible for Episcopalians to omit the Filioque when they're reciting the Nicene Creed. And it turns out that they actually are. And I got really excited to read that the next printing of the Book of Common Prayer is planning to drop the Filioque. But when I read further,
Yeah, but I mean, none of that matters because you're not in the Orthodox Church.
no,
So
yeah, and
and
I
it's a
understand.
giant gay. Why are you in a giant gay church, bro?
There's a long story behind that. I mean, it's been it's been a long journey. 5 years ago, I was voting for Biden and listening to MSNBC and getting jabs. So I've suffered a lot of paradigm deaths between now and then, and halfway in between, I ended up in the Episcopal Church. But the point of the story is just that that as I read further, the reason that they're omitting the Filioque in the future isn't because they agree with the theology of that or because they made some theological decision. It was actually meant to be ecumenical outreach to Orthodox brothers and sisters, is what the website said, which gave me a laugh because, as you said, we're considered outside the church, and that ain't gonna do it. That's not gonna be sufficient for outreach. But anyway, it just made me laugh. I thought you'd get a chuckle out
Yeah,
of that.
that is funny. I mean, it's an odd decision to try to, you know, make an ecumenist move. But Melchizedek, what's up, man?
Christ is in our midst, Jay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, so I've this is sort of a question that came up between me and some people after our Inquirer's class. I'm an Orthodox Christian in the Greek Archdiocese, um, and obviously the Greeks, among other churches, have some ecumenism rumblings in the upper echelons, and we were sort of asking between ourselves, discussing, what thanks be to God, our pastor is incredible. I mean, we couldn't ask for a better one. He's not teaching us nonsense. But in the event that something like this were to happen, there are no other options in our area. Was there a time in Orthodox Church history where like during persecutions, like what happens if like we lose or we get assigned a presbyter who's teaching gay nonsense or something along these lines. My bet.
You move to a different church. What do you mean?
Well, like, okay, yeah, I mean, I understand this, but just specifically in our area, this is the church. I mean, there's the Coptic Church and Catholics, and then extremely like dozens and dozens of Protestant churches. So is it
Right. No, the faith is more important than the rituals,
right?
and so that's why you have the history of the catacomb church. So it's more important to be maintaining the faith and to compromise it just to have
Okay,
a social network or something.
fair enough.
So
That's
yeah, but it's a great question, and I appreciate it. What's up, Derek?
Hey Jay, I have one off-topic question and one on-topic question, if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, so my on-topic question is I'm an Orthodox inquirer, and I'm trying to get my wife to come with me to church, but the problem is that she's a Pentecostal, and her big kind of hang-up is prayers to the saints and whether or not the saints in heaven can hear us.
Read Revelation 5 through 9. The saints hear the prayers of the church on earth because of the communion of saints, and try to get her to come to church with you because women convert through social means, not through theology debates.
Okay. Yeah, and next week at the catechumen class, they're actually talking about the intercession of the saints. Now,
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
my my off-topic question is the church I'm going to is an Orthodox mission. It's a OCA church. It's the only one near me, and basically, while I was there, um, we have an Egyptian lady who comes to the church, and she is an Oriental Orthodox. And basically, in talking to, he's the guy who does the Typica. And I basically questioned and said, so is she Eastern Orthodox or Oriental Orthodox? And he said that she's Oriental Orthodox, but that in the U.S., it's okay for them to come to an Eastern Orthodox church if there's not a Coptic church.
Well, I mean, it's okay for them to come, but I mean, they're supposed to be converted and renounce the errors if they're going to commune. So, do you mean she comes to catechumen class or she communes?
Well, yeah, today was the first catechumen class that I attended, and she wasn't there today. So I don't know if she's going to catechumen classes. And last week we did have communion because we had a liturgy, but I do not know. I don't remember if she ended up communing or not. But
Yeah,
he
I don't
kind
know. I mean, they're not supposed to, but I mean, I would just, try to convert her. Right? I mean, that's the point. Blurred, what's up? Yeah, this is really wrong when a lot of Orthodox churches start allowing these people to commune when they haven't renounced their errors. So, there's a lot of ecumenism everywhere. So, hopefully, it's not that. Blurred, what's up?
Hey Jay, sorry if my English is bad because I'm from Romania, but I just want to tell you that like a year ago or something. Firstly, I grew up Baptist. My father is a Baptist preacher and pastor, and my whole life, like I hated Orthodoxy here in the west of Romania. Like evangelicals hate with all their guts Orthodoxy because it's like the religion of the devil. And like
Right.
a year ago, I saw your best arguments against Protestantism, and it shattered my worldview, like completely shattered my world. I was like, how did I not see these things? And from that video of yours, I started attending Orthodox church and started talking to a spiritual father and things like that. And this whole year, I've been studying with him Orthodoxy and listening to you and a lot of other Orthodox apologists. And 2 months ago, I was baptized and chrismated and took my first communion. Now my girlfriend has been baptized. My brother is inquiring. A lot of my friends are coming, and I just want to tell you that I'm thankful. because I know you
Appreciate
debate.
that, dude. That's good, man. I appreciate that because we often hear a lot of negativity over the
Yeah,
debates,
yeah,
and it's always
exactly.
good to hear the encouragement.
I know you
Uh,
debate
yeah,
all day, all day. You debate Catholics and stupid Catholics and things like that. But like here in the real world, your arguments really like made an impact in my life. Like I have a new family, a
that's
new
good,
set
man.
of friends, and
Awesome.
I thank you for that. I really thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Lord. Anything else?
Uh, I I want to ask you, like, for millennialism and in a way, I know in the creed it says he's I know in English he's like kingdom will
Kingdom,
have,
kingdom shall have no end.
yeah, kingdom will have no end. And in like second Peter epistle, Baptists have a really Gnostic view, and they like to think that the
Right.
world is ending every single day and everything will burn, our bodies will burn. And they used to cite that verse that the sky elements will burn or something like that. And
Correct.
if you have a millennial view, that the church will grow and become this kingdom, will the world and universe burn in the end, or is that like
Right.
metaphoric?
No, it's a great question. So Paul says that our God is an all-consuming fire. When you look in the Old Testament and you see the fires appearing, the divine fire, the pillar of fire, that's not a created torch flame. That's the uncreated energies of God, because God is an all-consuming fire, as Paul says in Hebrews. And so the energy that is the conflagration is the uncreated divine presence of God. It's the same fire. That's why you can't say that it's a creature, because you're an idolater. Just like when Tim Gordon said God's glory is a creature, that's because of his goofball Thomistic system, that he can't say that there's an uncreated reality in time and space. Oh, you mean like the second person of the Godhead in time and space? Isn't he an uncreated reality? So they don't even realize that their position undercuts the incarnation when they're trying to argue against the energies and the divine theophanies in time and space. That's why they have to say that they're angels. So Baptists kind of do the same thing accidentally. They don't really know what they're saying, because they just assume when it says that the divine fire or whatever, oh, that's like God creating an asteroid nuclear explosion in the apocalypse, right? Like Hal Lindsey's nukes go off and that's the end of the world. It's the divine fire.
That's what
And the
I was
divine
I was
fire
going
is,
to say.
yeah, the divine fire is the same fire that's the pillar of fire in the book of Leviticus and Numbers when God appears, right? Leviticus 9, Numbers 12. That's the uncreated glory and power of God in time and space. And Roman Catholics just simply say that's not possible. So they limit God. They say what God can't do. And they have the same argument and logic as Muslims and Jehovah's Witnesses, because they end up saying that, well, God can't be in time and space. Those are all creatures. Well, then the Son of God's a creature and he's not God in time and space. It's just so stupid. And they're so hard headed and in a cult, just like Jehovah's Witnesses, that they can't just admit that, no, the God is the all consuming fire and it's not the divine essence. Okay, well, if it's not the divine essence, then what is it? Well, it's the divine energies. So that's the conflagration, and that's why we have to be deified, so that when that energy and fire cleanses everything and renovates the universe, we don't experience it as ever ill being. We experience it, as St. Maximus says, as ever well being. But great question. Um,
Do you hold that there are real distinctions within God, in that, and do you also hold that He is one, truly?
I mean, every Trinitarian holds that there's real distinctions between the persons and God. So, unless I wanted to be a Unitarian, you have to say that there's real distinctions.
So then
Is
you
that
have
what you're
to.
talking about, or are you talking about something different?
No, I mean what I'm talking about is like, I mean it may or may not make complete sense to even really think like this, but it's like, okay, when I'm thinking about Orthodox theology, it's like, from my perspective, I come in saying, I already kind of think that there are real distinctions between the persons. And then now I have to also make another distinction between
Right.
the persons and the energies. And then it's like, okay, wait, hold up. Like, where are we going
Yeah,
with
I mean,
this?
John Damascus has a whole section on this. It's book. It's On the Orthodox faith, it's book 3, chapter 15, and he says, nature, person, will, energy, and the effect of energy are all distinct. So, yes, you have to make those distinctions. You also have to distinguish mode, too, because you can't have the incarnation of one hypostasis without the theological toolkit of mode or in hypostatized. So all these things are necessary for Trinitarian theology. I mean, let's just forget all the metaphysics and the fancy terms. I mean, in Leviticus 9, the glory of God appears to all of Israel. Is the glory of God created?
No, it's the glory. It's God's glory. So,
Right. So it has to be uncreated, and yet it's in time and space. How is that possible?
well, time and space. I mean, I don't understand why something uncreated could exist in something created.
So you don't believe in the incarnation?
No, I'm saying I do. I'm saying I don't see why that would be. Why there would be a contradiction there for God's glory to exist
Oh,
within
right.
time and space. So it's
Yeah, well, I mean, if the second person of the Godhead can exist in time and space at a unique location, like he's in Jerusalem, he's not in Bethsaida, then why is it a problem for the uncreated energies to appear in time and space, and yet God is still uncreated? I mean, so they're really just, again, all of their argumentation against the energies undercut the incarnation. So yes, you do have to make. I'll give you another reason why. If you read Palamas's 150 chapters, just read paragraphs 98 to 103, where he argues by reductio that if you don't distinguish the energies from the essence, then there's no difference between creating the world and eternal glory. They're synonymous actions in God. Well, if God's eternal glory is the same thing as creating a world, then God is eternally creating worlds, and now we're Originists. This is literally Origen's argument. So God does different actions. That's the simple answer. That's why it says in Genesis he rested from his works on the seventh day, meaning he no longer created. So guess what? God's action and power of creating is not synonymous with the divine will, and it's not synonymous and identical to the divine essence, like idiot Roman Catholics think.
okay. So do you also caveat that with saying at the same time God is still one?
Of course. There's one God because there's one Father and there's one divine nature, and because they all indwell one another in the doctrine of perichoresis. All of those things tell us and point to the unity of God.
Isn't this a contradiction though?
Why would it be a contradiction when even in the created order, things that are one also have multiplicity to them?
Well, I guess it depends on how you define one.
Correct, exactly. And even Muslims have the same issue and end up in the same dilemma when they talk about the 99 names of Allah, which are not synonymous with Allah's essence. So they're in the same quandary. And it's even worse because they have 99 gods.
Well, it seems to me that oneness, in the in its right context would mean no divisions or distinctions, and that is what makes oneness
Yeah,
oneness.
but but that's not even true in Islam. So even Unitarian positions posit multiplicity in the Unitarian deity. So how is that position any better? How do you know that oneness has no distinctions, by the way?
Well, okay, how would you know that it does have distinctions?
Because the Trinity is a divine doctrine. We don't start with metaphysics and number theory to tell us who God is and what God is. We go by what's divinely revealed. So metaphysics is a secondary category that helps us understand divine revelation. It's not the thing that we judge divine revelation by. So if God tells us that he's one and he can appear in time and space, we accept that before we say, well, he's one according to the standards that I set up for him to be one. Things can be one in different ways. And again, every Unitarian position has the exact same problem. It's just not with persons or energies. It's with the attributes or the names or the titles. So let me put it this way. There's no such thing as a strict Unitarian position.
So then it's up to divine revelation to know. So how do we know divine revelation?
Well, I would argue that the Christian paradigm and worldview is the only position that gives an account for things like the problem of the one, the many, metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, all the components of a worldview and the preconditions for a worldview. They only make sense in the Christian worldview and the Christian paradigm.
So
So
then you
I
just
would
said
do
that
tag.
you have to figure out divine revelation yourself.
I mean, that's trading on ambiguity for what you mean by figuring out revelation. I mean,
Well, I mean, I said, how do we know divine revelation? You said I would argue that
I would argue tag.
in order to find tag, you have to, within yourself find it. I mean, it's obvious, but I'm getting at something here.
Are you asking, doesn't tag rely on things like logic and argumentation? Is that what you're saying? What do you mean by find it in yourself? I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how do you determine what true divine revelation is, and what it seems that you're saying is like
The
whatever
argument
makes the
was that
most sense.
only the Christian paradigm gives an account for the possibility of knowledge, metaphysics, and ethics. So it's a transcendental argument for the Christian paradigm.
So ultimately, it's tag. Is that what you're saying?
If you ask the question at a so you're just kind of like digging the question deeper, which is fine. And if you just dig deeper and deeper and say, okay, well, how do I even know that there is revelation? It's like that's when I get the tag correct.
Is that like the bottom of the rabbit hole here?
Oh yeah, because I mean, you could, if God exists, there's no other place or arena to go to appeal to another thing. Like that's the bottom of what you could appeal to, because in the Christian paradigm, God is the ultimate, foundation for the entire paradigm. So where else could you go or appeal other than to God Himself?
Wouldn't it be the church?
Well, I mean, that's part of the Christian paradigm. So indirectly, yes, the church would be part of that, but God is not identical to the church. God pre-exists the church.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I think where I thought this was going to go is that you were going to say, divine revelation because the church says so. That's where I thought we were going to go with this, but I think
Well,
where
no, because I mean, if that's a more fundamental question, because if a person doesn't believe divine revelation, they're not going to care what the church says. So why would I appeal to the thing that they don't care about? If a person's going to be a skeptic, which is basically you're arguing just skepticism, then you have to go to tag. There's no other place to go. Because if you're a skeptic and I start presenting classical apologetic arguments, well, no skeptic is going to accept the metaphysical principles that are presupposed by classical argumentation, like telos or cosmology. So there's literally no other place to go against a skeptic than to tag.
yeah, it's just it seems like a different arena. It's like
What do you mean? What does?
this the spiritual arena versus you know the divine revelation. How to understand that seems like it wouldn't come out of having a metaphysical analysis of reality. I think it
Well,
would
was it
necessitate
your
something
argument
else.
was a skeptic type argument? Well, how do we even know that revelation is the case? That's a skeptical line of argumentation. So how could I even argue against it if I can't go to the metaphysical tools or the philosophical tools that refute skepticism? I mean, you're the one asking the philosophical question. I mean, don't you think that skepticism is a philosophical line of argument?
Well, I think it's just I think everybody is owed skepticism. Like you can just ask whatever question, and it has to have an answer. Or why else would you?
Okay, but is it an epistemological question that you asked when you say, well, how do we even know that there is divine revelation?
Right? Yeah.
Well, there you go. So now you're in the domain of philosophy when you're asking epistemology questions.
I mean, I don't think that there's a distinction between divine revelation and philosophy in the sense that they're both uh, seeking truth. So
Well,
it
the fact
seems
that they have things in common doesn't mean that they're not distinct. So that's a fallacy. So, yes, there is a difference between human rationality and argumentation and dianoia and what we call divine revelation or God's self disclosure of himself. They're different things, even though they both pertain to and aim at the same thing. The Aristotelian logic is not the same thing as John 1. They're different things.
I appreciate it, Jay. Thanks. I think we're just gonna I'll just keep going around circles here, but I appreciate it.
Well, I'm sorry if it's not being helpful. I'm just trying to explain that, these are different domains and they do touch on some of the same topics, but just because they touch on some of the same topics doesn't mean they're the same. So that would be fallacy. What's up, Joseph? I'm you.
Hey, yo. So I had a quick question about tag, and then I had a question about I'm no longer dispensational, premillennial, but I'm still trying to work out a couple things about eschatology.
That's fine. That's all good. Go ahead.
All right. So for tag, could you explain again what precondition is, or how do you go from necessary precondition to the argument for God? Like, how do you pivot from the lower order to the higher order? How do you go from the necessary precondition of universals to
Uh
God?
huh. Well, because those things don't stand in a vacuum, right? Like, so if I start talking about things that are necessary to have knowledge at all, like logic, meaning, concepts, reasoning, all of those things that go into learning about the world, predicating about things in the world, etc., then I can start listing those things, those preconditions. And then you ask the question, okay, how are these things? Where are these things? What are these things? And what holds them together? And you'll notice that the preconditions for knowledge, can you mute when I'm talking? Because it's really loud
Sure. Sorry
background.
about that. I'm outside,
It's all
so.
good. It's cool. So when you list all these preconditions, you realize, oh, actually, they're not in a vacuum, and some of them actually relate to one another. For example, knowledge presupposes a knower, right? So these things all kind of interconnect. Even Dr. Ed Fazer admits that in his apologetics book. So even the Thomists will admit this point. And then when you say, okay, well, how are these things all interconnected, and what holds all that together, and what is the ground of all that? And the only possible ground that you could have for those things is the type of God that Christianity and specifically Orthodoxy proposes. So only an Orthodox metaphysic makes sense of universals, the logi, etc., divine conceptualism. All those things are part of the Orthodox paradigm. The created order, the essence energy distinction, all that stuff is coherent. It makes sense. It gives explanatory value and power. So that's the argument, right? It's not. Uh, so it's the logic of the questions that are being asked is what moves the person to the more fundamental thing, right? So, for example, if I say, okay, well, I have a knowledge claim that pencils exist. Okay, how is it possible for me to predicate about an external world where there's pencils and I have human knowledge of this object that's a particular object amongst many other objects, et cetera, et cetera? Well, I have to have these categories. Like if you read Aristotle, he talks about the 10 categories like location, quantity, quality, relation, etc. All those things have to be there for me to have even a sentence at all. So language and meaning presupposes a certain kind of world. For example, you couldn't have knowledge in a world where everything was just pure chaos and everything was like, I don't know, turning into the opposite of itself at all times. So you start to realize, okay, I actually need certain types of a world fitted to human anthropology and human predication and fact finding or whatever, because not any old world works for that kind of a setup or a system. So then you say, okay, well, these preconditions, these categories, what are they? Where are they? Well, they're not under microscopes. I don't find relation, quality, number, any of these things under a microscope. They're not in the atoms. They're not in the molecules. Okay, well, where are those things? Well, they're not in any. They're not anywhere. They just are the structures of reality in this world, and that's how knowledge is possible. Okay, well then, where do those things come from? How are those things? Who holds those things together? What are they, et cetera? And that's where you get the only type of world that makes the only type of deity that makes sense to hold that kind of world together is the one that's revealed in Christian theism. Does that make sense?
Yeah, super helpful, that last part of it, because it's sort of like a divine conceptualism, but it's a coherence, and that part about
Correct.
the world.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it also is a little bit distinct from divine conceptualism that Platonists offer, because Platonists will have a version of divine conceptualism, like William Lane Craig makes a Platonic divine conceptualist argument. But the problem is that Platonism destroys the possibility of knowledge if you're a strict Platonist, because the realm of the forms or of the monad or whatever is nothing like this realm. And so there's this divorce between the two realms that makes the bridge and the predication impossible.
Yeah, thank you. Very helpful on that. And about the eschatology stuff. So I'm still trying to connect the dots on things like Romans 9 through 11 as a former messianic, sort of like a Torah keeper type of guy.
Sure.
But I know that the Jews will have a mass conversion at the end of days. And how does that fit with like the return of Christ at the judgment, where the recapitulation happens? And I heard
Yeah,
that
so that, that
Justin.
that that's all that all happens before that. So like when Paul talks about that in Romans 11, he's describing it as a time period when there is still the possibility of conversion and salvation. So he says the Jews will be grafted back in, and he says it'll be like the world, moving from death to life. And so it can't be after the return of Christ, because that's when we have the resurrection and the great white throne judgment. So there after that, there's no, new conversions or something like that. Like that's it. History is complete at that point. So what Paul's talking about in Romans 11 has to be prior to the second advent at some future date. And there's a good book on this. It's called Apostasy and Antichrist from Jordanville Monastery, and it's basically just a collection of biblical quotes, church father quotes, saints and elders. And if you go to YouTube, the whole thing is on audio on a YouTube channel. If you just type in Apostasy and Antichrist, it kind of walks through in about, if you get the book, I don't know if it's out of print or not, but it used to be out of print. It's like 60 pages. It's more of like a booklet, but it actually has a really good presentation of like the loose order of events. I don't know if anybody knows exactly the order of the events at the end of the world, but like the loose approximation of the order of events would be things like there is a rebuilt temple, there is a continued apostasy amongst Orthodox Christianity, there is a world government, there's an antichrist figure, all those things are listed, and the mass conversion of the Jews. And so one of the things that's almost amongst all the church fathers that talk on it universally is this idea that you will see a new temple, you'll see an antichrist, you'll see an apostasy, and you'll see a mass conversion of the Jews. Those for us are the four sort of undisputed signs of the end of the world.
Right, and yeah, definitely look that up. The what is it called? Apostasy and Antichrist. Right.
Yeah, that's the name of the book by Jordanville Monastery. But if you go to YouTube, there's a guy a few years ago that basically just read the whole book in audio on a YouTube. It's like 4 YouTube clips, and so you could just listen to it. You don't have to buy the book.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, because I was wondering if Justin Martyr had said that Christ will reign on the earth in Jerusalem. I heard that. I don't know if that's true. Have you heard that?
Well, there's a couple early, so there are some early first and second century patristic writers that people think might have talked about premillennialism. But even if they did, and you can dispute what exactly how to interpret those texts, but even if they did, it ended up being not the interpretation of the church. The church did not postpone the millennium until the end of the world, because the millennium is first resurrection is baptism. So everybody who's baptized into Christ is part of what Revelation 20 calls the first resurrection. So in that regard, like nobody's going to be, uh, the kingdom is a present reality, because Jesus says, for example, in Matthew 16, I will give you the keys of the kingdom. And then he says the same thing 2 chapters later to the apostles. So that means the kingdom is a present reality. That's why in Luke, Jesus says the kingdom of God doesn't come with giant visible signs. The kingdom of God is within you, right? So it's the presence of the Holy Spirit in your heart. That is the kingdom of God. It's already here. And that's why we call it an already not yet scenario. So if you want to see the kingdom of God, you go to the Orthodox liturgy. That is the kingdom of God right now here on earth. And the Israel of the Old Testament with the temple and its ministry, that's a type. It's based on the heavenly worship. We don't believe that the liturgy is another type. It's not a type of a type. The liturgy is the fulfillment of the type. So when Moses constructed the tabernacle and the temple and all that, and laid out the pattern of all that, it is said in Corinthians and in Hebrews that that was all based on the tupos, or the types of the things in heaven. So Moses is seeing how the worship in heaven is conducted. And then he builds the altar and the Ark of the Covenant and all that, or he lays out the pattern of it. And then we think that when Christ came, he brought those heavenly realities to earth, and that's what the Orthodox divine liturgy is. It is that heavenly reality right now in reality. So it's already here. The king that is the kingdom. The kingdom isn't you know, IDF tanks, destroying all the Gentiles or something like that when Jesus comes back. Like Jesus comes back and like converts all the IDF to go and destroy all the Gentiles. And that's not what we think. We think that Jesus already reigns, because if you look in the New Testament, every time Psalm 110, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool, every time that's cited is talking about the ascension, which happened in the book of Acts. It's not talking about the second coming. And the problem with most Protestants, evangelicals, the John Hagee types, they take that reference to sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool, and they say, oh, this is some of the second coming when Jesus comes back and destroys Antichrist and all this kind of stuff. But if you look at the things that are said about the rod that proceeds from his mouth and so forth, that's the preaching of the gospel, right? The gospel is the rod that goes forth from his mouth in the church to convert the nations. It's not talking about him sending out nukes or something to nuke all the Gentile nations. So good questions, though.
Another thing,
Alexander, go ahead, John.
no, I was going to say another thing is people do get lost in the premillennialist conspiracy theory realm, where, like you were saying, the Ark of the Covenant had nukes in it, or like like Joshua.
No, John, don't you understand? The Ark of the Covenant is a magical Kabbalistic box that, just like in Ghostbusters, it's a Ghostbuster containment unit that lets loose all the spirits. And if you watch Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Raiders of
you
the
would know
Lost
that.
Ark. Yeah, and then another one is that Joshua had like sound weapons that took down the wall. Like, this is
I
real.
never actually, I didn't know that. So the walls of Jericho fell from ELF
Yeah,
weaponry.
yeah, I'm not even kidding. There's stuff out there like that. There's also stuff out there that like, um, like Moses parted the Red Sea with weather weapons. I'm not even making that up. They,
Yeah, I remember when I first started reading like evangelical end time stuff when I was like 19 or 20. I remember one of the first. This was before I bought Tim LaHaye and not just Left Behind. I actually bought Tim LaHaye's commentary on the Book of Revelation and read it before Left Behind came out. But even before that, there was this uh, evangelical prophecy book that was written by like two twin brothers. I forget their names, but they were dressed up like Indiana Jones, and they were sort of. I'm not kidding. Like the book was themed like the two Indiana Jones brothers at the end of the world, and it was all this like goofy evangelical stuff, and they were doing exactly what you're talking about, John, where they were like, oh, the scorpions mentioned in the Book of Revelation, these are like Black Hawk attack
right.
helicopters.
Yep. Yep. I remember yeah. They're Stinger missiles means scorpions. Like, yeah.
Exactly.
Funny.
Alexander, what's on your mind?
Hey Jay, how are you doing?
Doing
I
great,
have
dog.
yeah, I have three questions for you if you don't mind. So the first one is, how does one become a saint? What are the requirements?
Well, it's actually a good question. And one of the things that's different between the Orthodox Church and like the Roman Catholic Church is there's no central, Ghostbusters team that decides that you've done, quote, three miracles and therefore you're the, Game Boy saint, like that kid that is like the gamer saint or whatever. Like in the Orthodox view, it's usually a person who did a specifically noble action in their life that makes them a saint, right? Like, for example, Tsar Nicholas might not have been the best ruler, but he died a martyr's death. And there's a lot of instances of, saints who weren't the most, they didn't live their best lives, but they did achieve theosis through heroic actions or specific things. So it's a little different than the Roman, which is weird because, like, obviously the way the Orthodox do it, with it being primarily local, and the local devotion spreads, right? And then that eventually kind of gives an indicator when it spreads beyond the locality that it's a real authentic saint, because we wouldn't think that with the Spirit of Christ sort of guiding the church, that the church wouldn't be universally deceived about some saint. That's totally different from the Roman Catholic model, which is like, no, the Ghostbusters in Rome are the central authority, and they make the decision on who the true and false saints are after, quote, 3 miracles. Which, how do you even prove that? How does a council in Rome prove that there were 3 miracles that happened somewhere in Spain or something? I don't even understand that process.
So the Orthodox basically it's like a community thing where they know the person, they know his life,
Exactly.
and they. But at the end of the day, it's basically other people make a decision about him because I think you become a saint after you die, right? You can't be a saint while you're alive.
Right, pretty much, yeah. I mean, although many people say that they can kind of detect saintliness even in life, because we don't think that theosis is an eschatological thing only, right? Roman Catholics think that that's kind of afterlife, but we think that it's already started in this life.
And once the person dies, and then let's say he becomes a saint, and then is that the moment when you can ask for intercession to him, or when does that qualify?
I'm not actually sure about the specifics of like the timing of when you can ask for those prayers. I mean, if you knew that the person was saintly, you could probably ask for the prayers right away.
Okay, so just to sum it up, because I never understood how one becomes a saint. So just the community know the person, they know he's righteous in a sense to say, and then once he die, they make basically the decision for him. Also, does the person have a say before he dies if he wants to be a saint or not, or how does that work?
Well, I think most saints also have humility for the most part. I mean, all saints have some degree of humility. So no, I don't think they're going to say, "Oh, by the way, I'm a saint." Like, I don't think so. I mean, I think that like you said, the community makes that decision. But I'm not a hagiographer, so I'm not actually probably the best person on this topic. But what's your next question?
Okay, next question is there do you offer something where someone can book a one-on-one session with you, like half an hour, 1 hour? I know some people do this.
I used to do that, but I got too busy for that. So unfortunately, no,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have time to do that anymore.
Okay, understand. Okay, and then last question is I saw a video of you and your wife where she had like presented this kind of like a sketch. It's a pyramid when she explained basically who rules the world, and she started from the bottom of the pyramid all the way to the top. I don't know if you remember. I mean, obviously remember the video, and at the top of the video, basically at the top of the pyramid, she just put Satan, right? And the Satan is basically controlling his demons. The demons
Right.
control the elites, and blah blah blah, all the way to the bottom. Which I think it's an amazing video. Everybody should watch it. It's so simplified and interesting, and I agree 100% with it. So my question here, from basically watching that and understanding also your view of geopolitics and Hollywood and all those things, all the so-called conspiracy theories, which are basically true anyway. So in all of this, let's say mess, like how does Islam play a role here? Like I cannot see how Islam plays a role in all of this mess.
Well, you can watch all the talks that I did on the Milner Fabian conspiracy text from Johan Ratu, who is a Romanian writer, right wing conservative monarchist guy. I don't know him, I've never talked to him, but he wrote a really good book called The Milner Fabian Conspiracy. And he's probably the best in terms of like updating the type of stuff that Carol Quigley talked about and situating the role of Islam and Zionism in the West and in Europe. So it's absolutely necessary to read that book if you can get a hold of it. It's one of the best geopolitical books I've read. It's always at the top of my list because I mean he goes into like UN migrant replacement, like it's all up to date. Like I think he wrote it in 2014, so it's pretty concurrent. And he deals, with the overall Fabian socialist plan for Europe, which began with the Islamicization of the UK and then the later Islamicization of the rest of Europe. So the Fabian socialists were calling for all this Islamicization 100 years ago, and they were super explicit about it. That blew me away. I didn't even know that until I read that book. And I would have never read that book if it wasn't for just some random dude in Twitter comments saying, "Hey, you need to read this." And I was like, "Oh, that looks interesting." So it fits very well with Quigley. It fits very well with the history of like Zionism and the British Empire and all that too. And it also goes into the anti-white sentiment that exists out there, how it has a basis in the United Nations as well, the migrant replacement programs, which are all real, and it goes pretty in depth into modern day Labor Party, Tony Blair, false dialectic, all that kind of stuff. British intelligence kind of being behind a lot of the stuff going on with the so-called Islamic radicals and the Wahhabis and the Sunni Londonistan stuff. Like none of that could have happened if British intelligence hadn't wanted and allowed all those people to be there. So that is the book that is the kind of ultimate explainer. There are some other more mainline geopolitical books that do explain it fairly well. There is Mark Curtis's book Secret Affairs, which he is a Royal Society RIIA researcher, and that book is excellent. It's really good for all the admissions of how the British establishment has for a long time funded, aided, and allied itself with Salafi Wahhabi movements for geopolitical purposes. But he's more of a lib, so he's not going to be as on point as the Ratu book. And then Robert Dreyfuss's book Devil's Game is really good for explaining America's involvement with the same radical Muslim movements that the British intelligence superstructure had co-opted and used, decades earlier. Because what happens is basically, by the time of Brzezinski and those people, they just decide to use the British model of co-opting and steering, Mujahideen, Al Qaeda, all these kinds of groups, which the British have been doing like 80 years earlier, 70 years earlier. So that's the answer to how Islam fits into it. Spiritually speaking, obviously Islam is Antichrist. I mean, it's a horrible, evil cult, uh, and the reason that it's worth refuting and harping on is that all of these, Saudis and all these people, like they put billions of dollars into promoting and funding and pushing Islam in the West. I mean, they built giant Islamic centers all over Florida now. So people who act like, oh, you're talking about Islam because you're covered up for Jews, that's just so ridiculous. Because, like, obviously, anybody who has been to England, if you've been to London, like, it's Muslim now. Like, what are you talking about? Like, obviously that was by design. Okay, this stuff doesn't just happen like accidentally, right? Like, oh, we just wake up one day and like, oh, Biden accidentally told all these people to storm the border, and it's just accidental. That I mean, it's not just Islam either. Like when I drive around, we drove all around Florida the last week, and we saw multiple giant Hindu temples. It's like, well, how did there get to be giant Hindu temples everywhere all of a sudden? Like this is obviously on purpose. It's not accidental. And when you actually read these high level geopolitical texts, they're very candid about it. Like both the proponents and the critics are very open. It's very clear. It's not hard to figure it out. It just sort of amazes me. And I'm not faulting you, Alexander, but like it's amazing how much is in all the books, and then people are just mystified and like just shout at you and call you faggot all day long when you just try to talk about what's actually in the text. So it's just where everything's getting crazy, dude. Henry
Another
wants to.
good
Yeah, go
another
ahead,
good
John.
one, Jay, is A Century of Terror by F. William Engdahl. And
Oh, that's
the,
like the one Ingdahl book I don't have. I got to get that.
yeah, so one thing that people don't parse out, which is funny, is so people will always point out that, like the neocon Jews ran the Bush administration, right? Well, why did they also accuse that administration of setting up terror groups, which I think that's the case myself. So you're saying that neoconservative Jews set up Islamic terror groups, and people don't understand that that's a tactic of,
Absolutely.
yeah. So A Century of Terror is more of a kind of a critical thing of that particular era, like the 2003 to 2007 era of terror. But yeah, neocon, predominantly Jewish people were involved with setting up Islamic terror groups. And yet now people don't understand that, like we've kind of like we've gone through de-evolution, like, for lack of a better word. Like we have to start all over again. We thought from this point up we'd be able to kind of like listening to you for many years. You've had to, like, you're talking matter of factly about historical things, thinking that people are understanding you, and then we've not even realized this whole time that there's, a generation of people who have no idea what we're talking about.
Exactly, and who've never read a book. In
Right.
fact,
It's
there's these studies which I assume that they're accurate, basically saying that like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like many of them have never even read a book.
Yeah, they don't understand nuance. They don't understand, like, hey, I mean, you can comparatively go through these things. Hopefully, maybe, like, a lot of, I mean, obviously you or myself, like back in the day, you read a book and you're like, okay, this might be something I'm gonna attach to my worldview, and then you're like, okay, wait, maybe not, because I read this other thing and it's kind of countering that. But it doesn't seem to be that people are reading books and doing that type of thing. But we can only hope that uh, there are going to be some youngsters who are going to take our advice here.
No, what's happening now is that, like Jamie was saying, she's sitting there next to me listening, like everybody now just sort of like repeats whatever their favorite influencer says. The influencers starting to read books. Yeah, I mean, and the faith lords themselves aren't even reading the books. Like, I mean, I don't know what books Candace reads or doesn't read, but I'm just using her as an example. I would imagine Candace has a team of people that research for her, and then she kind of just states what they talk about, right?
Yeah, it's probably. I mean, I'm sure in certain instances it's kind of a both and, but yeah,
Yeah, I'm not
I
saying she
get.
never reads books. I'm just saying like she probably has a team of people that are like,
No,
okay, here's
absolutely. I mean, even H.G. Wells had a team of people writing his books for him. He wasn't really all. I mean, he was a smart guy, but he wasn't like right. He wasn't pumping out all of those books like we thought
Wait
he
a minute.
was.
You're saying that Bill Clinton didn't and Britney Spears didn't write their autobiographies?
You know what? Just put in that part about Carol Quigley, and that's all I really want to contribute to the book there.
Remember there's also the odd comment in Bill Clinton's autobiography about the moon landing, and he's like,
Yes. Yeah, that's in
"Well, the
yeah,
moon landing did look kind of crazy."
yeah, that's in My Life. He had that quote, and then he had the part about Carol Quigley, and that's really the only reason to own that book, My Life by Bill Clinton.
Yeah, right. Henry, what's up?
Hey, um, I was just gonna ask, did you see the Anne Hathaway like UN ad?
Have not. What did Anne Hathaway promote
Well,
from the UN?
yeah, I mean it's just like a propaganda piece, and it actually was really interesting to me because I graduated probably like two years ago or so, and I wrote it
You graduated from Anne Hathaway University, so you know all about it.
from college. Uh, no, I mean Anne Hathaway, she got the looks though, but she's a mouthpiece, unfortunately, for the left. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, yeah. I wrote an essay on propaganda in the USSR, particularly this woman who had sort of these stories, these essays about um, how mothers are working so hard, they're doing so much, and for what is, pretty much the whole point. The whole ethos of it is look at what we're doing, look at how much work we're doing, but who's really benefiting? It's just like, the men, and the wife just has to do it all again, and look how horrible everything is, and the family's horrible, and
And this is what Anne Hathaway was talking about. You're saying?
yeah, and so Anne Hathaway, I mean, like pretty much literally is what they were saying is, and this was this was like posted by the UN, and it was a video of her, and she was saying how look at what all the mothers do, and it's like yes, absolutely, and we should praise that. And she was pretty much she reduced it to, but how sad it is that what they do, they don't get a wage for. I mean, that's literally what she was saying. She was saying they don't.
So moms need a UBI. Is that where that's
She
going?
was
Like,
pretty much
you need
saying,
to give.
well, well, it's sort of this idea. First of all, is that the family, everything is for the state. That communist idea, and that fascist idea too. That just authoritarian idea of it's not about family, it's not about kids. Like to the point where if you are helping your kids, you are helping your family. Well, you should be earning a wage for that. Because everything has to do with the government, everything has to do with the state. So if you're breastfeeding your kid, we'll clock your hours and make sure you get that time in. And like this is it literally is exactly the same type of propaganda that the communists use to deconstruct the family to make it for the
Interesting.
state. And when I say it's like similar, like I mean, Jay, like take my word for it, it is literally the exact same thing. Reducing the family um to make the state
Like
better.
economic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. For economics, to make the state better, that it's sort of this weird unified thing where, like, oh, they're all suffering, but if we could just do it for the state, it would be so much better. And it was this, and it really is like that one to one. So when I was watching the video, and like people were saying, "Oh, you're just reducing motherhood to economic units, pretty much." And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what they're doing, and it's exactly what the USSR did, and pretty much put mothers out there writing all this stuff about this, and it is one to one. So I just wanted to make a comment about it. I thought it was really scary, and of course, this isn't the first time this has happened. The Democrat Party
Yeah, I
has been doing
remember.
this for a while.
What's her name? Hermione from Harry Potter. She was like given the same types of feminist lectures like 10 years ago at the UN. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So I would just say this stuff is really one to one. It's super obvious if people know about these sort of propaganda tactics by USSR. It's like it's really obvious. So I guess just cling to the truth of orthodoxy in these times. We need to be really humble and really discerning in these times. So yeah, thank you, Jay.
Yeah, appreciate that, Henry. That's really good. Maybe I'll find that clip and play it on tonight's live stream because that sounds pretty interesting to deconstruct from a propaganda standpoint. I wish that when I was on with Alex, they had found that clip of Arnold when he's talking about the kid with the gas mask. Number one, just because it's hilarious, but Arnold is so candid there. He's like just saying that we lie with pulling on heartstrings. Blurred, unmute.
Uh, Hello again. In relation to dispensationalism, like a, a little side plot. I think believing in heresies from an individual standpoint, like subjective individuals, not geopolitics or like universal things, but believing in heresies on the individual level, I think makes sense on a level. For example, like people who believe in the papacy, it gives them kind of a safety or something because they have that head of the church, or people who believe in sola scriptura, they believe they are smart enough, like they are the pope in a way, they can
Well,
understand the
it's a
Bible.
delusion, right? I mean, the church fathers talk about it as a spiritual delusion. So, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be
So
a delusion if it didn't give you, some kind of, you know, sense that
exactly.
you were on the right track or good feelings or, pride or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever.
In relation to dispensationalism, I accept everything you say and I believe it the same way, like geopolitics, in that way, but I don't understand from the subjective, like from the individual standpoint, why do people believe in dispensationalism? Like it just makes them second tier Christians in a way, second tier God chosen people, B tier
Well, I can
people.
tell you, I can tell you why I believed it when I was younger, and it's because I was ignorant. So I thought when, I'm just first time beginning to read the Bible and beginning to try to understand these texts, and then you see preachers, you listen to preachers giving lectures and talks, and they're kind of presenting these charts and these systems that attempt to make sense of something that's very vast with thousands of pages. So you just kind of default to thinking, oh, that makes sense. Here's this structure of how God worked through these seven dispensations, and it kind of makes things coherent, so you think, right? And then over time, as you get more and more biblically literate, you start to realize, oh, there's actually some pretty huge glaring contradictions and nonsense in this system. So it's just because people in mass, are not well educated on those topics in American Protestant evangelicalism. I mean, you hear the guys calling in, like the guys that call in who don't know anything, and they just, say the stupidest stuff. Like they're all, and I'm not trying to be mean, but they're just sort of uneducated Bible Belt people that are good-hearted and mean well, and then they get locked into some stupid system, and then it becomes a prideful thing that they double down on. So that's why.
Yeah, but here, for example, here in Romania, in the evangelical circles, like dispensationalism is seen as, in a way, God wanted to work through Jews and like save the Jews, but the Jews like rejected him. So then he turned to the Gentiles and he said, "Okay, you don't want me, so I'm gonna save them
Yeah, it's like
instead. But
God's
I'm gonna."
schizophrenic and has plan Bs.
Yeah, but Gentiles are seen as like second and B tier people, and like God wanted to save the Jews, but He can't. So no, He's gonna save us because He doesn't have anything to
Yeah,
do.
well, that's because it's also a Zionist adjacent worldview, and Jews promote dispensationalism.
Yeah, yeah. I understand
It's a
this from the
Judaizing heresy that benefits them.
I understand this from the geopolitic worldview, but from the individual standpoint, I
Yes,
can
it's
get
because they're
why would
ignorant.
you
They
why
because
would
they're
you want?
dumb and they read the Bible and they don't
Even
understand that when it talks about the people of God and Israel as the apple of God's eye, they don't realize it's the church. They just think, oh, that's talking about the things set up in the Balfour Declaration over there in Israel.
even if they go to a Protestant seminary or a like a Bible college, because I had a family member who did both of those things, and then I was talking to them one day, and they didn't know. Not only did they not know anything about Orthodoxy, they didn't even know anything about Roman Catholicism. So the Protestant world is very closed. Like they don't want to, and even if like here's a perfect example, because you're from Romania, you said.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you know that book Tortured for Christ, right?
I've heard of it. Yes.
Yeah, so that's a book written by a Baptist in the East, in the East or in the Soviet era. If you read that book, they never mention orthodoxy in the book at all. And
Yes, I know. I know.
so
Orthodox priests that die here. It's a very censored
it
subject.
is.
Everybody's talking about Catholic priests that died, but nobody wants to talk about
Yeah,
Orthodox
it's
priests that
it's
died.
it's not. And I remember I picked that book up a number of years ago, and I thought it was going to, mention something about either Catholicism or Orthodoxy, and I was like, oh wow, it's entirely censored. Like they don't even mention it at all. So I think that's what you're dealing with is like a purposeful kind of exclusion of that.
Also, I would imagine, the CIA and these entities, FDA has talked about this too. They have a huge amount of soft power and influence in places like Romania through pushing these evangelical things. All this evangelical stuff is a form of Americanism and soft power.
Yeah, it all comes from the West. Because if you come here in Romania, for example, in the west of Romania, there's a lot of dispensationalism, a lot of evangelicalism,
Yes.
but the east of Romania doesn't have this. It's mainly Orthodox, and
Interesting.
um, and I just wanted to mention that maybe it has something to do with the Gnosticism of Baptists and evangelicals, because
Mm.
I all my life I heard, because I grew up in Baptist circle. All my
John,
life
can you mute? It's really loud.
all my life I heard that we don't need rituals, we don't need like the liturgy, because God gave the Jews a liturgy. God gave the Jews rituals, so we can do like we can worship in spirit and good faith and something.
Yeah, that's all
Because
Gnostic. Yeah.
yeah, it's all Gnostic. The Eucharist, everything they say that everything was given to the Jews, and we're like I said, Plan B people, um, who just gotta pretend, in a way, pretend we're worshiping God, because they have the rituals, we have symbols. We have we gotta thank God that he looked at us, because we're not Jews, we didn't deserve it, and that's the spirit.
Great comments. Appreciate that. Blurred. Luke, unmute.
Hey Jay, quick inquiry question. My girlfriend and I have been together for a long time. We grew up like Pentecostal Assemblies of God. I recently, through listening to the online debates like you and Tim Gordon, you and Jim Bob and all of that, I was listening to Fearless Truth with Nick. I started inquiring to Orthodoxy about like 3 months ago, like the beginning of August. Really just trying to figure out, I was rejected by the church. Me and my girlfriend have illegitimate children. We're not married. She doesn't really want to ever get married. She doesn't see the proof of a paper. She doesn't want the state involved. She grew up Catholic, but isn't practicing Catholic. I don't know, any advice on where to go? Like, I can't, join the church. Do I just like keep going to church? Like, I'm confused.
Well, the fact, I mean, what your wife or what she wants to, or girlfriend, whatever, what she wants to do or not do, it really doesn't have anything to do with whether you can join the church. Why could you not join the church?
They said I was, rejected to be a catechumen candidate. Like, I can't, perform any of the, I guess like the rites that they do. I was taught the sign of the cross. I've been going to liturgy for a few months.
But
Um,
what was the reason? Because usually, I mean,
He said I
you're the
was failing to repent of my old sins because I'm not willing to join to the body, like with the marriage, was the big thing, is that I'm not married. We have kids, we're not married. So I'm in sin, living in sin and obstinate, according to the church.
But if she won't get married, that's not your fault, right? That's what you're saying.
Uh, Sort of. I'm willing to get married. I've asked her to sign the paper, to do like some sort of an informal thing where we just go into the courthouse.
Hmm.
But yeah, as far as like participating in the church, I'm not allowed. I had a meeting with well, actually several meetings with the priest, and he said due to the living situation that I'm in, since we're living together, we're cohabiting and all of that, that
Hmm.
I'm still obstinate to the church, that I don't accept the sacraments of the church, due to my lifestyle.
Why does she not want to get married? She said it's just a piece of paper.
Yeah, that she doesn't want the state involved, like the big brother looking at us. So we're both pretty right wing, very conservative. She doesn't see the point, like, because it's a public ceremony. We have to pay like a license to the state, all of that, and it bothers her. Like, she doesn't see why anyone else has anything to do with our
Hmm.
relationship. That's her point.
Yeah, this is a tough one. This one is beyond me. I would say, do you know Father Deacon Ananias on here? I would say reach out to him. He might be a better help. Like he could probably put you in touch with somebody better equipped to that specific kind of canonical issue than me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I'm a listener, so yes, I know FDR.
Yeah, send him a message or a DM, and I'll tell him that you're going to message him because this one is a question beyond me.
Right on. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate your
Yeah,
help.
man.
You
Sorry you're
can
having
remove me.
to deal with tough times. Yeah, yeah. That's a good. See, I don't know everything. People think I'm an asshole, and I just act like I know. There's all kinds of stuff I don't know. That one's beyond me. Like I'm not equipped to handle a lot of like canonical questions, which people, that's like what you have to take up with like clergy and stuff. So, but I mean, I see the point though with like the state being involved in marriage as a problem. Um, that's a tough one. I'll see you guys later.